Welcome to another episode of the Life After Cardiac Arrest podcast with me, your host, Paul Swindell. Today I'm joined by paramedic Paul Warwick, who's not just any old paramedic, he's a very special paramedic to me because he was the person who actually, just over 5 years ago, came to my house and defibbed me back to life. So thank you very much for that, Paul.
No
and
problem.
Welcome today.
Thank you very much.
Firstly, can you tell me briefly about yourself?
I can. I'm 55 years old. I've worked for East of England Ambulance Service now for 16 years. 2 years was a trainee paramedic, and then I qualified in 2004 and became a senior paramedic. My responsibilities are to train up student paramedics now. We ride out with them, and to deliver obviously quality pre-hospital care where required, administering drugs and also making referrals to other healthcare professionals.
So what was it that made you want to become a paramedic?
There was a couple of things that happened. I spent a long career in engineering, and I felt maybe a bit of an early midlife crisis that I needed a change of career. And I was sitting in my lounge at home, and all of a sudden I heard a bang, and I saw a girl flying through the air and land in the road. And I didn't really know what to do. I had no first aid experience, so all I could do was call for an ambulance. And a guy turned up on a car, and he was so calm and confident. I was like sort of blown away with how cool he was and the treatment that he gave this patient. And it just sort of inspired me to look further into that career, which I did. And I had a chat with my wife because it was a bit of a pay drop, but decided that it'd be a good idea to have a go now. And that's what happened, and I never looked back since.
So that was about when you were 40,
So I was 38 when I started. And I went from a very well paid job to my pay as a trainee wasn't great, but the job satisfaction outweighed the payment. Mm-hmm. So I'm never going to be rich, but I quite enjoy what I'm doing, which I think is a good thing in life.
Is it something you recommend other people do to switch careers at that stage?
I think if, like myself, I went into a career without really choosing it. We got jobs as youngsters and just went along with the jobs. And I think if you got the opportunity to do something you really want to do, I would say go for it. Life's too short to just work for money.
Mm-hmm. And had you any sort of inkling before in your life that you wanted to do something medical or giving back like that?
Nothing at all. I wasn't sure about the sight of blood. I always felt a bit faint, so I wasn't too sure how I'd cope in real life situations, but I'd never thought about it before. So it was, it was a big change of career. And
just because of that girl getting
it was that, and also probably 2 years before, my daughter got hit by a car, and we were on holiday in Cornwall, and an ambulance crew turned up. I just grabbed hold of her, didn't know what to do, and they were so calm. And so there was a couple of factors that made me think, I'm sure I could help people if I knew how to.
You mentioned about you trained up 16 years ago. What did you have to go through for that training?
So we have it's a 13-week initial training course where we sit exams on anat and phys, and we have OSCEs where we go through scenarios with actors as patients, and we're critiqued on these. And also we then do a 3-week driving course, so we can drive on blue lights. If you pass all of that, we come out onto the road as trainee paramedics, so we're put with a qualified person for a year, and we have to gather a portfolio of evidence and be assessed along the way. And by the end of the final year, if everything's up to date and you pass your final assessment, you're then a qualified technician. From that point, you then go on to do your paramedic exams, where you do an entrance exam and then you go on to do your paramedic training. It's changed slightly now, it's more university based now, but at the time mine was done purely through the ambulance service. And then we go into hospitals to do placements, cardiology, we go into A&E, maternity. As you can imagine, we can come across everything from birth to death and everything in between. So we need to have a rough idea what we're going to do when we get there.
Mm-hmm. So would that, all paramedics do that, get to go to the different disciplines within medicine? Yeah,
all paramedics will do a hospital placement. So we go into theatres to learn to intubate for our unconscious patients. Brilliant airway management. We go into maternity. We hopefully help deliver babies in maternity, so it's not a shock when you come out and have to deliver a baby. We're taught, I think now we have a mental health placement, which is a new thing, because mental health is more and more frequent to us. As paramedics, we come across it quite a lot. And they try and touch on where they put you with an expert in that field to give you a bit of guidance and support in your training, so you can pretty much have a rough idea what you're doing and how to deal with it when you get there.
And you mentioned that you're actually a senior paramedic now, so how many years do you...
Yeah, they give you that title now. We have to do a university module we're called paramedic educators now. So we do a module which gives us a mentoring qualification, so that when the students come out, we've got a structure we can put in place to critique them, to sign off parts of their portfolio and just guide them along the way. So I will be put with a brand new student. They will come out as a third person, and we basically don't put them under any pressure, but we have them for a period of time. And by that end of the period they're with us, they should be working independently and looking towards being autonomous in their decisions. So that's my goal, is to kind of help them achieve that.
Good. And what training do you get? This is the Life After Cardiac Arrest podcast. Yeah. So what training do you get around cardiac arrest events?
The cardiac arrest protocol has changed since I've been in the service considerably, and it is really, we're having really good outcomes at the moment, and it's about getting the resource to the patient as quick as possible. So the call is very important. It's the call to arrival time which is crucial. So once it's deemed a cardiac arrest, they will get the nearest available resource to that patient. The resource they get will be either a paramedic or student ambulance paramedic crew. We are taught to get early defibrillation, so as soon as we can get our defib pads on, we will get them on and assess the rhythm of the patient. We get the patient in a position where we can all work around that patient, so that's the important thing, to make room. Our defib pads will go on as quickly as possible. We assess for any cardiac output first. If there isn't any, we will be doing chest compressions straight away while the other guy's connecting up the defib pads. Once we establish the rhythm, we will then either shock if it's needed to shock, or we carry on with our resuscitation. So in the meantime, we're called for another crew, because we have this approach now where it's called the pit approach. And what we do it like a pit stop. So everyone will have a station. You'll have an airway station, defibrillation station, and someone running it. So we need all hands and quality CPR, good chest, effective chest compressions. You can only do for 2 minutes, so we need to change that person doing them every 2 minutes. We need to do regular output checks, and it's an ongoing circle of resuscitation. It's very effective. We're getting really good return of spontaneous circulation. So when we do, we can call for senior clinicians. We've got the air ambulance which come out and they can administer further drugs that paramedics can't if they're required. And then depending on what rhythm we got, where we are location-wise, we can take straight to the cardiothoracic centre if needed, and they can continue further care, maybe stenting and monitoring the patient.
Would you ever take them to the Southend Hospital if you're in Southend, or do you always go straight to the CTC in our area?
So if we get a return of spontaneous circulation and we establish that it was cardiac in origin, the arrest, so if it wasn't respiratory or neurological, it was caused because of a blood clot in the heart. The ECG, we do an electrocardiogram reading. If that's showing they're having a heart attack, we can then ring up the cardiothoracic centre. If the patient's unconscious and they have an ITU bed there, they will accept, and the patient goes straight to theatres. So it's depending on how the patient is presenting. They may be alert now and talking, which is different, but if they're unconscious, they need a specialist bed. So it depends. We will have that conversation with them, and they're really good at advising us what we should be doing. So we kind of look at the bigger picture, but if we can get them there, we do, because the outcome there is brilliant.
How often are the patients conscious after resuscitation, talking and cohesive?
It can happen. If we're there, if we're there very quickly, or the patient arrests in front of us, it can be that they've been in cardiac arrest for seconds and they think they've fainted, so their heart rhythm will go into ventricular fibrillation, and we shock them straight away, and it's as if they've blinked their eyes and they're just talking and they're unaware of what's happened, which I've seen quite a few times. Mm-hmm. So that's actually being there when they arrest, because everything's to hand.
So do you put the pads on just in case, if someone's having a heart attack?
Yes, so as a paramedic, if I'm transferring to the cardiothoracic centre someone having a heart attack, I tend to monitor them through the defibrillation pads, just so I'm ready, because it is a very unstable condition they're in. Not everyone does, but I like to know that I'm ready just to...
Mm-hmm. So you can literally throw the switch if
yeah, no, I've done it, and it's worked. So it's a good, I think, a good thing to do.
Do you know how many arrests that you've attended to?
I've attended lots of cardiac arrests, but the ones I kind of count are the ones that we get people back to a quality of life from, and I would say there's probably at least 10 that I know of that I'm still getting Christmas cards off some of them, and it's great. I still see a guy in Rochford where I live. He arrested upstairs. He was a big guy, arrested. We managed to resuscitate him. He got further treatment, and he comes every Christmas, gives me a card, and this must be for the last 10 years now. So he's still going strong, which is amazing. And it's a good achievement for me, makes me feel great. And he's had a brilliant 10 years of life so far.
Absolutely. So you sort of touched on when you get to a scene, what equipment do you have and what medications do you have that you can provide to the patient? So, and at what point do you call on extra help like HENS?
So we will pretty much establish, we will go in from the ambulance carrying the defibrillator, we have a resuscitation bag, we have a drugs bag, which is all sort of one thing, the suction unit. So we're full up with stuff. We come in with everything we need to carry out that resuscitation. So it's quite a lot of equipment. So sometimes we're struggling upstairs and in places, and it is awkward, but we will take in everything we need. Once we've established it's a cardiac arrest, we will let control know. We will confirm cardiac arrest and that it's workable, and we need the other resources.
Is it workable in that you can attempt
so
to resuscitate?
If we establish that it's someone that's collapsed within a few minutes, or we don't know exact time, they're warm, we look for signs of that they have just arrested and they haven't been there for a while, which it would be futile. So we established that it is a workable cardiac arrest, and we let control know. They send further resources. If HEMS are available, the doctor and the critical care paramedics will arrive, and it becomes a big team. But it's a really good team that if you are going to die, you want us around.
I mean, you got a good relationship with the East of was it Essex and Herts Air Ambulance? I imagine.
They're brilliant to have. They're really good support. They're very pro paramedics. So they will come on scene. We'll give them a handover, and they let us run the job as we're running it, and they just ask us if they can do anything, and if we get a return of circulation, they can either fly to the nearest cardiac unit, or they travel by road if necessary. So they can. We do get resuscitation, and they sometimes become very agitated because of hypoxia. They might start coming round. The doctors can sedate them, which they like to do, so it maintains a good airway. The patient's not distressed. Observations are nice and calm, and it's a more stable environment rather than trying to hold someone on a stretcher because they're so agitated. So they're brilliant to have. Cardiac arrest.
Mm-hmm. Do they ever fly to the CTC?
I think they do. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure, but I think if they're miles away, I imagine they do. I'm not sure. I think it depends on how stable the patient is, but I'm pretty sure they will do. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And what are the sort of drugs that you could administer?
So we look for reversible causes. So once the resuscitation's ongoing, we look at what may have caused the cardiac arrest in the first place, whether it's a blood clot in the heart.
Will you tell from an ECG on that? Or?
We can tell that by a history. So if someone said they clutched their chest when on the floor, and it's sort of indication of it's a chest pain and they've collapsed. There's drugs that can break clots up. There's if it's by an accident or intentional drug overdose, there's drugs we can give that reverse the effects of drugs, so that will enable the heart to go and the breathing to start again. We give a drug which speeds up, or it's supposed to speed up the electrical contractivity of the heart, so it helps it to start and reset itself. Oxygen's a great one, so patients sometimes die because they haven't got enough oxygen, so we can sort their airway out, and we can, through ventilation, get their body back to being oxygenated and pumping their heart round. Massive blood loss, if they've had an accident, we can stem the blood flow, we can give some fluids, and we can give a drug which will potentially stop, sort of aid clotting to hopefully bring on a resuscitation. Temperature related problems, we can warm patients up if they're freezing cold and try and get their heart going. So we've got reversible causes, and that's what we look at. So we try and gather a history whilst we're working on it. It's not always clear.
There are some cases where you can't get them back immediately if they're in flat line.
Yeah, they're different heart rhythms. Asystole is a very unusual one to get a return of spontaneous circulation back, but it does happen. If it's a shockable rhythm, there's a very good chance we might see a survival. Defibrillation, basically you're stopping and resetting that heart, and we want it to go back in that rhythm that can pump the blood through the heart. And if that happens, we've got a very good chance then of getting you back.
Mm-hmm. When you're using the defib, could you just run through a little bit about what you do and what your protocol is?
Yeah, what we do, we pop the pads on straight away. It's connected to this machine, and on the machine we have a screen. We look for a rhythm. So if it's a flat line, it's asystole, and we just carry on with resuscitation with chest compressions and ventilation for as long as we can to try and change that rhythm into one where the heart can actually start going. If it's like a bizarre wavy kind of line and we have no pulse, it's more likely to be what we call VF, and that's a shockable rhythm. So we will then administer a shock straight away. There's other rhythms, VT and VT without a pulse, we can shock as well. So the pads are on, we look at the rhythm, and the machine is preset to a shockable energy setting.
What would that be?
It's 200 joules. So we charge it up, and once it gets that charge, we push a button and it releases the power and it sends the shock through the heart, and that's it. And then we carry straight on with chest compressions. Even we don't look at the rhythm, we carry on for another 2 minutes. So if the heart has started going, we're still assisting it. And then on the next pulse check and rhythm check, we can feel an output by palpating radial pulses or carotid pulses. We then stop the chest compressions, and then we start looking at whether they're breathing okay and ventilation, and start thinking about transferring them to the CTC.
So everyone will probably get 2 minutes of CPR or whatever, is that what you said?
Pretty much, yeah. So once we're on the chest, they will get, the PIT approach now is about minimal time off the chest. They found that by doing chest compressions, you're getting this blood pressure up that's hopefully perfusing everything in the brain. So as soon as you stop, that pressure's dropping down. So we want to keep that pressure on. So it's a very minimal pulse check, rhythm check, and then back on the chest straight away. If we shock them, it's back on the chest. And it seems to be working. From what I've seen, our resuscitation I've seen a lot more cardiac outputs coming back and respiratory outputs coming back through this new approach.
And say the first shock doesn't work, so you continue doing CPR, and then is it the same shock again, or do you up the
so
joules?
What we do, we carry on with the same pads. If they're in VF and we've shocked them, after the third shock we can give another drug, amiodarone, which can help settle the rhythm down, and we're trying to get that rhythm back into a sinus rhythm. So following the third shock, we will give this new drug, and then hopefully that will get them back. But it's ongoing. So it's not about moving the patient, it's about doing it on scene and getting the best care we can on scene, because when you're moving someone, you're not actually doing effective resuscitation. So if we've got a good team there, the doctor's turned up, we've got a new machine now which our managers carry, which does artificial chest compressions.
Is that a Lucas?
The Lucas, yeah. So that's placed on, so that takes away us having to get worn out and change all the time. So it frees up pairs of hands. It's really good.
I imagine CPR is quite tiring.
It is tiring, yeah. If it's done properly, we have a puck that we put on the chest, and through our defib it monitors the depth, rhythm and rate of our chest compressions, and it tells us if we're going deep enough, if we're going fast enough. We have a metronome to help us, so it sort of...
How often do you break ribs, do you think?
I think the cracking sometimes is cartilage, I've heard, and not so much ribs, but I think when it's someone who's quite frail, I think you go in a bit tentatively at first and try and gauge it, because we are after a good depth of compression. And I think if you've got a couple of broken ribs but you survived, I don't think it's the end of the world. So it's not a nice feeling hearing something crack, but it does happen.
Yeah, it's painful. I've had you hurt my ribs a little bit, but I don't think I had any broken ones.
No.
But I can guarantee that 99.9% of patients would rather have that than the alternative.
Yeah.
So I don't think you need to worry about it.
No.
And going back to the shocks, so you've done 2 so far. How many shocks would you continue doing, and how long can you go on for?
We continue. So if we're continually shocking, we think about applying new pads in a different position. So we may change the pads from front to back just to try an alternative route of the shock through the heart.
So could that be something physical that's blocking the
Yeah, I
amount of power?
mean, we just try everything. So we want to, I think after 6 to 8 shocks, we're advised to change the pads anyway. So it might be an idea to put them in a different position. But we're just going to keep going until we get a change, or till someone senior is going to assess it and say, you know, we've been doing this active arrest for so long, they've been doing for so long, and then eventually it'll be called.
Does the person's bodily makeup alter the sort of jewels or position?
Position-wise, yeah. I mean, there's lots of different physical things that can affect it. I mean, you can go to quite large patients and it can be awkward just moving them or trying to get around them. Even doing chest compressions is awkward. Airway is awkward. There's lots of physical factors that will affect each job.
There's one thing, question I've seen a number of times in my group and other groups is, like me, if you've got an ICD and for whatever reason it was to fail and you had to bring an external defibrillator to me, would you be able to use that on me, and would you do anything different?
Yeah, no, we would assess you. We have a ring magnet which we can put on an ICD to disable it if needs be, if it's firing for the wrong reasons. But to me, if they're firing for a reason. So normally they will do the work, and I've not seen anyone have it fire where it shouldn't be. So if we put our pads on and you've got one anyway, if ours is picking up like VF, yours should be shocking you. If it isn't, we can shock you. Mm-hmm. But I've not come across anyone yet that is fouled on. Only I've come across people that it's worked on, where they've like flown across the floor and not know what's happened, and obviously their heart's gone into a rhythm and it's done its job.
So you're attending them after they've had a shock?
Yeah,
and
that's happened quite a bit. Yeah, it's because it is quite a shock.
So what do you do in those cases if someone?
We monitor the patient, and obviously their heart had gone into some kind of rhythm that needed shocking out of. So we will monitor them, and our advice would be to take them to the hospital for further assessment and monitoring. So that's what we'd do. We'd put our own electrodes on to monitor their heart, so it would pick up any disturbance in their rhythm. And if they're shocked again, they're in a safe environment, we're all around. But we would take them for further checks, definitely.
And on the shocks, what's the most number of shocks that you've given to someone and got a successful outcome?
I couldn't tell you. I've administered a lot of shocks before, and we've still got an outcome.
10, 20?
I wouldn't say it's more than 10, but I've been to patients that have been shocked a lot of times.
I mean, I see sometimes patients where they arrest, you get them back, and then they arrest again, and so they would have multiple shocks.
Yeah.
I saw one lady who I can't remember how many arrests she said she had, but it was in the tens.
Wow.
So I can only imagine that she had an enormous amount of CPR. And
I imagine it's quite worrying for the crew as well if someone gets...
I imagine it's quite exhausting as well.
Yeah.
It's not just from the physical point of view, but the mental point of view as well. And that's probably worth touching on that. How do you guys deal with the situation? I mean, I remember, I don't know if you probably have, Chris Solomon's video on YouTube. Do you know of him? He's worked in the ambulance service, and he was Helicopter Heroes, a TV program, was filming.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And he had a heart attack and then went into arrest whilst he was at the ambulance station, and where they had the cameras there, so it was all captured on film. And I'm in awe of is the calmness of all of the professionals that are there. And is that what it's like all the time?
I think you need to, although it might be a stressful situation, you need to act calm, because it can get out of hand if you don't. You need to have someone running a cardiac arrest, so you need to have a plan. So the only way to do that is to stay quite calm but be effective. Mm-hmm. If you're all panicking it just go wrong. It just go horribly wrong. So you need to stay as calm, even though inside you might not be. You need to be looking at it. So it might appear that we're all like used to it, but it's still, we're all trying our best to resuscitate that person. But I think because we come across it quite a lot, we look like we're quite calm and comfortable doing it, although it's not comfortable.
Mm-hmm. I read in a report once saying that, or it was a study actually, that the more experienced the paramedic and the more cardiac arrest they've attended, the better the success rate, which would make sense. Is that your experience as well? Have you got better at it as you've gone on, do you think?
I think I'm calmer at a cardiac arrest. But I think some of the new guys coming out from the university are very clued up and they're very confident and very good. So I think whoever turns up, you've got a pretty good chance. The training's really good now. It's just a nerves thing, and but the people I've seen that have just started their career are as good as I am, better than I am. They're very good.
And I guess with the pit crew system as well.
Yeah, so we've got the system.
It's not just on one person. So
we've got the system in place, and if someone's running that, it works brilliantly. If someone just keeps a little log of the times, when drugs were given, when shocks were administered, who's doing CPR, when to change, it will run really well. It'll be like a textbook, hopefully.
So what happens once you've got the patient back again? What next?
So the patient, we're all kind of quite happy inside, thinking, "Wow, that's good," and it does throw us sometimes because you're like, "Whoa, I wasn't expecting that." So we're looking at just stabilising the patient. We keep them nice and flat, and once we've got an output, we like to keep them for about 10 minutes without moving them too much, just to keep them, to stabilise them, check their blood pressure, check their oxygen levels, the respiratory rate and their heart rate, and then consider where we're going to move. So whilst we've given them the 10 minutes, we're thinking about ringing whoever we're going to ring to take them to. So that's when we will make the call to CTC if we think it's appropriate, or to our local hospital if that's the other option.
Do you normally take them yourself, or will the air ambulance?
Yeah, we normally run by road. I mean, because we're quite local to from this area, the cardiothoracic centre's down the road. So if you had to load someone onto an ambulance, onto a helicopter, you've got to get them to the helicopter, load them on, fly that there, unload them. If it's only 10 minutes to Basildon from here, that's what we'd do, we'd drive. It's a lot quicker but for distances, the helicopter, you can't beat it. So it's a logistical decision.
Once you've taken them to the hospital, is that the last you see of them, or?
Well, we give a handover, and sometimes we take them straight to the theatres at the cardiothoracic centre, so they're all aware from our alert. They're all waiting. There's a team there with the cardiologist, and they will go straight in, which normally happens, which is really good. And they then have an angiogram, and they're stented if need be. The clot's removed, and by the time we've completed all our paperwork, because it's probably a bit of a rush anyway, and we haven't had a chance to do it, the patients sometimes are out from the theatres. So it's that quick sometimes. Sometimes I've been allowed in to watch what goes on, which is really interesting, really. It's brilliant stuff they do. And the actual chain of survival now is fantastic, taking them straight to theatres. It all helps with the long-term goal of a healthy patient. You're not delaying any treatment. Mm-hmm. So, it's great.
Do you get to know the outcome of the patient? Whether if you brought someone who's maybe been put into a coma, do you get to find out what's happened?
We can do, so we can make a phone call just to the ward that they're on. Sometimes it depends. Sometimes the next day we might have someone having a heart attack that we go to see, which happens quite a bit, so we can check up on patients from the day before. So if it is a ROSC, I tend to find out just to see how they're doing. But that's just my own curiosity. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to know how people are doing.
I mean, do you think that helps in your experience and how you manage each event.
Yeah, these jobs are the big jobs that we joined to do. These are the rewarding ones, and this is making a difference to people's lives. And that's, what we've been trained to do, and you're actually completing what you're trained to do. We don't do it every day, but when we do it, it's a great feeling. So it's nice to find out what's happened to that patient.
Yeah, you're at the sharp end of life and death, aren't you? You touched on the maternity side of things as well earlier. But,
yeah. So we palliative care is sort of going away from the cardiac thing. Palliative care is another big thing we come across these days, and people ring an ambulance because they don't know what to do. So we're trained more and more in end-of-life care now, which is it can be tough, and they're quite upsetting jobs for the family, and so we do sort of touch on life and death daily, pretty much.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was going to touch on that so hopefully you do get a good outcome, but what about when you get the not so favourable outcome? How do you handle that?
So the work-wise, what we'll do is we basically, depending on what the situation of the arrest, we may need police involved, or it might be just expected. So depending on the situation is what happens next, but we complete forms, and we have to do our sort of patient report form on all the treatments we've administered. We've got to deal with families, so if there's families on scene, we have to break the news to them, which is quite tough sometimes. We have to deal with arranging what happens next, so we can be tied up on scene quite a while, and it can be quite emotional. The actual job may have gone really smoothly and been like a textbook job, but I think the aftercare and like talking to the family and relatives is something that you need to get through experience. It doesn't come easy, and there's ways. None of us are taught on how to break bad news. It's something that you learn how to do, and you need to be honest with people, but compassionate as well. And it is tough. And I've come away with a tear in my eye a few times.
Yeah, I imagine it's hard not to take that home sometimes, especially when it may be a young person.
It is really tough. It is tough. Yeah. But we have to, because we can't carry everything with us. I think we'd all have nervous breakdowns. Some things touch home, like they reflect on your own life. Certain jobs might trigger memories, but I think we kind of all talk, and we've all got a warped sort of sense of humour now, which is our way of diffusing things. And I think it's good to talk. Talking is the best thing. We can't go home bottling things up.
Okay. Do you have official debriefs at all?
We do. We have debriefs. We have support if we need it. Following some nasty jobs, you will get a phone call from a counsellor, and they will ask if you need to meet up or for any further treatment, and it's there if you feel you need it. So the support's there, but sometimes people don't take it, and where they should have done.
Just going back to sort of finding out about the patients. What about when the patients wants to contact you, and then they're back out of the hospital and want to meet their saviours?
I'm more than happy to meet up with people. It's great. It's great to see that people are doing well, and like yourself, it's amazing what you're doing, and it's brilliant.
Is that
no better thing.
Would that be true for most paramedics?
Oh,
do you
definitely.
think?
Definitely. To see someone that was unconscious, not breathing, with no heartbeat, working, functioning, having a good quality of life is amazing.
It's the reason why you do your job.
This is the big part. In a way, we're privileged to be able to provide that service. I feel it's very rare that someone can actually save someone's life, and when you do it, I think it's like a privilege. It's brilliant.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that I see sometimes is patients are a little bit nervous about meeting their saviours. I was about meeting you because basically we got no memory of it. You're almost like a stranger to us, but they feel like they want to be able to give you a gift or something, but obviously nothing's going to match the gift that you've given to us. But what would that, if you were to say, if someone says to you, what would you like?
Nothing. We'd just like to see that you're happy and functioning, and that's it. We don't require. I don't need anything. I've got everything I need. So it's just amazing to know that people are doing well, and that's it. Good.
I mean, I totally agree, because for me, when I met you and the Hems guys, it was a great experience for me. Very emotional, but also it felt like something, a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I don't know why that was, but it was a case of there's this blank period of my life, and that a whole bunch of people came to help me out in my hour of need or moment of need, and I just want to say thank you to them. And
it was brilliant. I mean, what you did, and everyone met up, because even being a paramedic, I know what goes on behind the scenes, but to actually meet everyone and see everyone involved, you then realise how bigger the picture is. And it was great for me seeing the call taker, the dispatcher, like us, then obviously the air ambulance guys, and it was just a massive.
So that's unusual, is it?
I've never done that before, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was brilliant, and everyone telling their own little story, and it just put it all together, like for you, and also because I only see my bit of what I do, really. I know the CTC do amazing stuff and that, but we don't really see it. But to hear it as a timeline was really good.
Yeah.
I really thought it was good. I'm really glad I went to that.
I probably did have it, like you say, pretty much all of the links of the chain of the survival.
From your wife, what she's doing to the
call handler, the dispatcher, then you, and then Ben and Will from the Hems.
Yeah, it was brilliant.
It was.
And nice cakes as well.
That was my baking period, as
that was amazing.
My neurologist called it. I haven't made them for a long time. I should get back into baking again.
That's cool.
So it seems a good point actually to sort of talk about my event, because maybe you could fill in some of the missing bits for me. Tracy, my wife, she's not always keen on talking about it.
Right. And, so what I recall, driving up to your address today, it kind of all come back to me, because I remember we were just minutes away returning from another job, and we got this call. So we were here within, I think, 3 minutes. We was just round the corner, and I remember going upstairs to was it an office up there?
Yeah.
And it was the day after your birthday, is that right? I only know because on top of you was like cards from your kids, and we're like, oh my God. So they'd all sort of fallen, and the room was a bit of a mess, and your wife was quite frantic, understandably. So we began chest compressions on you. We obviously felt for a pulse, there wasn't one, and the defib pads went on, and you got a shock, and then I can't remember exactly the amount of shocks, or I think it's just one, wasn't it, with you?
I think there was a couple.
Oh, a couple. Yeah, I've actually got the printout at home. I should have brought it. I kept it.
I'll be interested to copy it.
Yeah. I've kept it. But that was really good. And then obviously by the time Hems had turned up, we had a ROSC with you, and then it's about a case of keeping you nice and flat, getting you down the stairs, and in your front garden they sedated you on the stretcher.
I hear there was a lot of noise going on because there was some building work going on next door.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So your garden was like a hub of activity, and I think there was a few passers by. But yeah, so they sedated you on the lawn, and then we transported you to, it's like 5 minutes up the road from here, isn't it, to CTC?
Well, depending how fast you're going.
Yeah, we were going pretty quick.
I could imagine.
But, yours was like it was like textbook, really. It was, but I do remember like the birthday cards, thinking, he's a lot younger than me, and that's another thing as well. Going to people younger than me that have arrested, makes me appreciate getting to my age. Yeah.
Indeed. I mean, I don't really know how many people attended me. So there was you, there was
So we had
the Hems, there was two
I think
guys.
there was I think the Heart crew turned up as well.
What are the Heart crew?
Heart, the hazardous area response team. I seem to remember them turning up.
Why would that have been?
I don't know, but
And then maybe Hems would have called them because they had to. It wasn't easy for them to get to me because I had to land on a local golf course.
I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure they were there. I've got a feeling there was a Heart team there. I'm not sure. I might be wrong there. Mm-hmm. But there was me and my crewmate Simon. There was another crew, and then I'm sure they were there. I'm sure. So there's quite a few people.
And so you had fun getting me down the stairs, did you?
Yeah, you were on a scoop stretcher. We got you down quite easily, and it was a little bit awkward, but we've done a lot worse things. So yeah, it was quite easy to get out, really.
Good.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, it was the day after my 47th birthday.
Yeah.
I've forgotten now.
Yeah.
And I'd been out the night before to see Frank Skinner in concert.
Oh, right.
And down at the Cliffs Pavilion, and I've got no memory of that at all.
Oh.
And he's appearing at the Cliffs Pavilion later in the year.
Oh, I see. Are you going?
Should I go?
Maybe he was rubbish and you're better off not remembering it.
About a year or so afterwards, he brought out the DVD of his concert.
Right.
And it was like, is it Russian roulette to actually watch this?
Maybe not.
Well, I'm glad it wasn't raining like it is now on that day.
No, it was a nice day. I remember it being a nice day.
I mean, I remember someone saying that they put me into an induced coma because I think you mentioned earlier that some people become agitated.
Yeah.
Do you remember at all about that?
That's what they did. You had started breathing for yourself and you had a good cardiac output, but you hadn't gained consciousness yet. And I think just to keep you stable, that's what they did. They intubated you and sedated you just to keep you like nice and calm.
So obviously that's got to be one of the highlights of your career, saving me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Joking aside,
It is
what has been your highlight of your time as a paramedic, do you think?
I think my job in general is just on a weekly basis. There's something that I enjoy. I've made some really good friends through the ambulance service. My old crewmate, we're really close friends now. And I think working with him, it was like going out with one of your friends. So I was getting paid to go out with my friend and do this amazing stuff. It's just, I just felt sort of blessed that I could do that. It's incredible. So my job, I'm hoping a highlight will come up yet.
It'll get bigger and bigger as you go along.
I hope so, yeah. But when you do something that you're really proud of and feel really good about, you think nothing can top that, and then 6 months later something will. There's always something that turns out really good or you're really proud of doing. So there's no telling when it'll happen.
Mm-hmm. What's the rest of your day like when you're a paramedic?
We do a lot of mundane things. To some people, we do a lot of referrals. So at the moment, we're getting a lot of calls from the 111 service. So we have to go and assess patients, and if we feel they need hospital treatment, we'll take them, or we refer them back to GPs. So we still do the people falling over, picking them up. So the actual really big jobs that we do may sometimes be few and far between, but they do come along.
If a paramedic's listening to this, is there anything you want to get out there at all?
Well, I do feel that doing the job I'm doing, we sometimes forget what we actually do and what an amazing thing it is in a job-wise. And when I was off with a bad back recently, going back to work and the thought of what I actually do at work was quite scary. But because we do it all the time, we take it for granted a little bit. But what we're actually doing is amazing. and so keep doing it. And it's a cracking job.
Outside of your paramedics, I believe you do some charity work with your colleagues as well. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so each year we enter a Tough Mudder event. It started off just as a one-off thing. We raise money for different local charities, and we get a team together of paramedics and friends, whoever wants to do it. We all dress up, wear vest tops, and do a 10-mile assault course. It's a weekend away. It involves a lot of beer, getting drunk, hangovers, and getting electrocuted. So it
sounds a bit like a cardiac arrest patient.
Yeah, it feels like it when you get shocked, but it's a really good fun thing to do. We love it, and this year we're raising money for the Little Princess Trust, which donate hair to or money to cancer children, and it gets some wigs and stuff like that. And one of our colleagues is having her hair cut off, and she's donating that. So it's a really good cause this year. We try and keep it local, but yeah, it's just good fun. It's good sort of bonding time with your crewmates and stuff. Yeah, we have a great time.
You were saying that you had a little bit of an injury and some time out of work, or away from your training and out of work, and you had something that you maybe wanted to tell other paramedics, that going back to work, what that's like after a break? Yeah,
I had a back injury. I've got ongoing. I think everyone in the ambulance service has back problems, but mine flared up. I had to go to the hospital, have some physio and a scan. And I got back to work, and before I got back to work, I had 2 months off, and I was kind of a bit tentative about going back, sort of thinking about the things we have to do as a job. And because we normally do it on a day-to-day basis, it doesn't really, you don't really think how awesome your job is. But it was quite scary, and once I got back into it, I soon sort of, but it made me appreciate what we all do. And you know, it's quite a big thing that we do, and it's life-changing. So,
absolutely.
Everyone should keep up the good work.
I tell you, there's about 1,200 people in my group who all think you're awesome and do an absolutely amazing job as well. So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be here, and this podcast wouldn't it be existing, and a whole host of other things in life wouldn't have happened without you and your colleagues across the land. So it's a big thank you from me and everyone else in the group.
Well, you're all welcome, and it's what we're trained to do, and it's what we, you know, the outcome that we want. You know, it's very gratifying for us.
Mm-hmm. Well, hopefully things can only improve in the future with the mandatory CPR training and more AEDs in the general public. And hopefully you'll be seeing more of us around, and you'll be getting more thanks. And,
this is lovely to meet up again, and you're looking really well. So,
thank you, and you as well.
Thank you.
Before we get too lovey, we probably better call an end to the podcast, and I'd just like to say thanks again to Paul for coming to the scene of the crime, as it were, again.
No worries.
Which hopefully wasn't too bad for you, and thanks very much, and hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been nice to meet up again. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.